Hello there, William Pater here for Journey Road Ministries. I think I missed a week. Yeah, pretty sure I did. So I'm gonna give it twice the effort this week. Song I'm gonna sing tonight is kind of a backwards song, so it's appropriate for our reading today. It's called "Sour Grapes." It's by John Prine, as usual, and so I'm gonna sing it for you. And we'll go from there. I don't care if the sun don't shine, but it better or people would wonder. I don't mind if it never quits raining, except the kids are afraid of the thunder. Say sour grapes, or you can laugh and stare. Say sour grapes, well, I don't care. I couldn't care less if I didn't have a friend, except people would say I was crazy. And I wouldn't work 'cause I don't need money, except the same folks that say I was lazy. Say sour grapes, you can laugh and stare. Say sour grapes, well, I don't care. Couldn't care less if she never come back. I was gonna leave her anyway. And all the good times that we shared don't mean a thing today. Say sour grapes, you can laugh and stare. Say sour grapes, I don't care. There it is. Made it through with no errors. I will see you on the flip side okay. Back from the concession stand. Remember the drive-ins, and they'd have a little break between movies, and they'd get you to go to the concession stand and get some popcorn and bring them back. I remember going as a kid and as a young adult. Awful good fun at the drive-in theater. So this passage is for proper 20. I'd like to know when they do an improper. I guess I'm showing my ignorance on that, but it just seems funny to me. Luke 16, verses 1 through 13. Then Jesus said to the disciples, "There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property. So he summoned him and said to him, 'What is this I hear about you? Give me an accounting of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer.' Then the manager said to himself, 'What will I do? Now that my master is taking the position away from me, I'm not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do, so that when I am dismissed as manager, people may welcome me into their homes.' So summoning his master's debtors one by one, he asked first, 'How much do you owe, master?' And he answered, 100 jugs of olive oil. And he said to him, 'Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 50. Then he asked another, 'How much do you owe?' And he replied, 100 containers of wheat. And he said to him, 'Take your bill and make it 80. And his master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes. Whoever is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much. And whoever is dishonest in a very little is dishonest also in much. If then you have not been faithful with the dishonest wealth, who will entrust you to the true riches? And if you have not been faithful to what belongs to another, who will give you what is your own? No slave can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. That ends the gospel. And I love this piece, because you read it and you just end up scratching your head, and you're thinking, what the heck is going on here? This is backwards. This is upside down. And it is upside down, because every time God enters into the equation, things get turned upside down. Now, we're used to hearing the meek shall inherit the earth and all that kind of stuff from the Sermon on the Mount, right? And we just take that for granted. But we don't really think about how incredibly revolutionary a concept like that is, or was, I should say, in a world where strength was power and power was everything, and you could do anything you wanted to if you were rich and powerful, and if you were weak, you were a slave, and you were subject to the whims of the rich and powerful. That's the way it worked. There was no voting, there was no equality, there was no democracy, there was none of that. If you could seize for yourself wealth and power, you used it. And there was no sense of morality, or don't do this or don't do that. I mean, that was, sure, there were morals, but if you had it, you used it. And here comes this guy, this carpenter's son, this carpenter, who says, well, you've got it all wrong. And not only the Sermon on the Mount, okay, but remember the story of the prodigal son. Right? The prodigal son, he goes away, and the good boy, the good son, stays there, works hard, and then the prodigal son comes back, and the dad, butchers the big fatted calf for the prodigal son, and the guy who stayed home and did the right thing, he was like, hey, what about me? I'll stay here, I'll work hard. And the father's like, well, that's not the way the rules work here. And so you read this passage, and I'm thinking, what in the world is going on in this passage? Because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, what he says is, okay, I'm going to fire this guy. And the guy gets all freaked out about it, right? Gets all worried about it. Oh, what am I going to do? I'm not young anymore. I can't go dig ditches. And everybody hates me. And I don't want to go begging for stuff. I don't want to beg. So what does he do? He meets with these debtors. And he says, hey, man, how much do you owe the guy, big guy? He always say 100 olive oil. Well, make it 50 and pay that. And he cuts them all. And so the master comes along, and now the reason he did it, because he is trying to buy his way into their hearts, because he's been, okay, the way things worked back then, okay, the way things work is the master is a non-residential landowner. So he owns this land. Wealth and power all over again. Owns this land. And he lets these people who basically function as sharecroppers. They can farm the land, but they have to pay a pretty high price. And what he's charged them is extortion. I mean, it's extortion rates, because they don't have a choice. And so what do? They try to cheat him. They try not to, it's a dog-eat-dog world. It's like, how much can I cheat you, and to make it, more equitable. And so they don't pay, and he's got on his books, 100 barrels of olive oil that he's not getting paid on. And so he tells his steward, his manager, he was squandering his property. Okay, squandering his property. Well, what's the steward do? He's like, oh man, I don't know what I'm going to do. Goes out and he says, look, he thinks if I can cut their debt, they will like me and take me into their homes when this guy kicks me out. I will have bought friends with dishonest wealth, because all these transactions are fraught with corruption. Right? Well, at the end of the day, if you look at it, at the end of the day, everybody comes out a winner. Okay? The debtors get their debt reduced to a reasonable amount that they can pay, and they pay it. The owner, who's not getting anything, gets things, and the steward gets to keep his job. And he's made a whole bunch of friends in the meantime. And that just runs counter to our sense of morality, our sense of purpose, our sense of equity, our sense of I worked hard for this and then I have to deserve it. It's just like back to the prodigal son. When God enters the equation, things are turned upside down. Like that song, Sour Grapes. Okay, we all know what sour grapes are. It's a great Greek mythology, of the... Was it a fox? I think it was a fox, trying to reach these grapes, and he can't reach them, and he says, oh, well, they were sour, probably sour anyway, right? In other words, not only am I going to give up, but I'm just going to say, it wasn't worth it. It was never going to be any good. And so you're lying to yourself, right? That's what that Sour Grapes is all about. It's lying to yourself. And the song is called Sour Grapes. And why is he sour? He starts off the song, he goes, I don't care if it never quits raining. I don't care if the sun don't shine, except, people start to wonder, or the kids are afraid of the thunder. I don't care if I didn't have a friend because, I don't like people very much, and it wouldn't work because I don't need money, except people would say I was crazy and lazy, and so I'm just, really bitter kind of stuff, really bitter. And then we get to the real reason that he's bitter, the reason he has sour grapes, the reason the world's upside down for him is because his girlfriend walked out. It doesn't get any more real than that, right? But then he says, I was going to leave her anyway. And all the good times that we shared, they don't mean anything now. He's still got sour grapes. He's still in an upside down world. When God enters into our lives get turned upside down. It's not what we expect. It's not what we think is right and true. It's upside down time. Okay, it's backwards, and we feel that it's wrong. When I read this, and I consider myself a fairly equitable person. I believe in justice. I believe in equality and doing the right thing and all those kinds of platitudes. And then I read something like this, I'm thinking, these people are all bad people. They created these transactions that were corrupt and exploitive, and then this guy who's about to lose his job, cuts the bills in half, and the master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the children of light. All right, now just let that sink in for a minute. Jesus is commending these people himself. Okay? And he's saying, look, it's better to buy friends, to buy into the hearts of people, to make friends with dishonest money than not. Because then you have real friends. Then you have real human relationships. Then you've done something nice and wonderful for these people. The money that they owed you was too much anyway. It was wrong. It was corrupt. And so dealing with corrupt money dishonestly, but in a way that is humane and helpful, is what's going to get you. It's going to get you into heaven, as they say. I don't know if there's a heaven or not. But what he says is, if you've not been faithful with dishonest wealth, who will you entrust to you the true riches? And this man was faithful to dishonest wealth. He made a deal. They paid it off. The master gets his money. He could have just sat there and said, sour grapes. He didn't. He went out and did something, and at the end of the day, every person in this story is a happy chappy. They're all happy. They're all sustained. The sharecroppers had their debt reduced. The master gets his debt back. And the steward gets to keep his job. So, I'm not sure that our little morality plays have much meaning in the big picture. And I know that we can't understand the mind of God, because if we could, it wouldn't be God. So there's no point in trying to understand the mind of God. What we can try to understand is what Jesus is communicating to us that leads us to eternal life. And this is a perfect example of something he's communicating to us that we say, that's upside down. And what Jesus would say to us, he would say, yeah, that's right. It's upside down. You're the ones who are upside down, not this story. Right? The same guy who brought us, the meek will inherit the earth. That's the craziest thing I ever heard of. The meek never inherit anything except, death and disease. And yet here he says they will inherit the earth. Okay. Well, go be upside down. And remember, the more upside down you are, the closer to God you become. And I'm going to sign off. Sorry to have missed a week. Not that anybody ever hears these things, but in any case, I'm still sorry I missed a week. God bless you. Have a great week. One more thing. It just dawned on me. That song by... just give me a moment. I'm going to pause it. Found it. Hope that wasn't too long. Well, it wasn't a long pause for you. It's kind of like Einstein's bending light. I just paused the video. Right. So what I was thinking, what occurred to me, is Mumford & Sons' song called "The Cave." Well, so I managed to turn that video off before I was finished. So let's get back to this lovely brainstorm of Mumford & Sons and their song "The Cave." And so in their song called "The Cave," if you haven't heard it, go look it up, listen to it. They have a lovely video. It says, "So come out of your cave walking on your hands and see the world hanging upside down. You can understand dependence when you know the Maker's land." All right. Now, this following is from the St. Francis of Assisi biography by G.K. Chesterton. And G.K. Chesterton is an amazing author, and you should just read him on your own. In any case, the relevant paragraphs are Francis at the time, or sometime where about the time when he disappeared into the prison or dark cavern, underwent a reversal of a certain psychological kind. The man who went into the cave was not the man who came out again. He looked at the world as differently from other men, as if he had come out of that dark hole walking on his hands. This state can only be represented in symbol, but the symbol of inversion is true in another way. If a man saw the world upside down, with all the trees and towers hanging head downwards, as in a pool, one effect would be to emphasize the idea of dependence. There is a Latin and literal connection, for the very word dependence only means hanging. It would make vivid the scriptural text which says that God has hanged the world upon nothing. Now, that is an elaboration of what I've been saying for the last 15 minutes. And that is, when God enters into the equation, turns the world upside down, he creates a world of dependence, just like these debtors, just like this steward, just like this master. All of a sudden, they are all dependent upon each other. So with that in mind, learn to walk on your hands, see the world upside down. Have a blessed week, 2 weeks, and I'll see you in 3.